So every caregiver has a story, and mine goes like this. I was born right here in Washington, D.C., over at GW Hospital, or over there somewhere, and I was raised in the suburbs of Maryland. But I left the D.C. area soon after college, and I swore I would never come back. Never say never. That was 1983. Fast forward to November 2009, and my parents were still living here, while I was living out in LA, barely making ends meet. 2 days before Thanksgiving, and 3 hours after I got off the phone with him, my father died unexpectedly of heart failure. I flew east for the funeral, devastated by my father's death, and heartbroken on arrival at the sight of my shell-shocked mother. She was 80 years old, and I was 50, and we were both in pretty bad shape, but my mother was so distraught she could barely function. I knew that she had no intention of leaving her house anytime soon, and I couldn't imagine her living in that house alone. So I made a tough but relatively quick decision. After swearing off DC as a youth, I came back in middle age and moved into my childhood home, determined to save my career and my one remaining parent. Like most caregivers, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. In between taking my mother to medical appointments, filling her prescriptions, and managing a 4-bedroom house, I tried to earn a living. It took me a while to realize that I already had a full-time job, and that was caring for Mom. So we wound up living together for 3 years. And I wrote a book about my experience, partly to make sense of what I'd been through, but also to contribute to a much-needed conversation about the cost of care in the United States. And by cost, I mean the personal and the economic sacrifices made by millions of family caregivers every day. Now, we live in a data-driven culture, but not even a number this big can compare with the people behind the number. Those folks are the real agents of change. So every caregiver has a story. With 40 million caregivers, think about the potential. We are basically sitting on a gold mine. After writing my book, I was eager to hear from other caregivers and get the word out about what we were all going through. So I started a weekly podcast series where people caring for a loved one tell me their stories. And the stories I hear are truly heroic. Here's an excerpt from a woman I interviewed from New Hampshire named Denise Sleeper, who was forced to leave her job in order to care for her husband, Scott, who was diagnosed at age 48 with early onset Alzheimer's disease.
The impact of early onset Alzheimer's is tremendous, especially when you're young and you're of working age, you're raising children, you have financial obligations. We had plans for our future. We thought life was going to go a certain way, and then it quickly became, oh my gosh, how do you adjust and how do you plan for what you never could imagine?
In the first 3 days after this episode aired, $450 was contributed to Scott's GoFundMe campaign, and Denise was contacted by this staff member from the Family Caregiver Platform Project, whose goal is to get caregiving issues on state party platforms across the country. He'd heard the podcast, and he contacted Denise to see if she would speak on behalf of the project and assist them with language development, and of course she said yes. And the most wonderful thing is that she told me afterwards that this is exactly what she hoped would happen by telling her story. Here's another example where a campaign that was created that resulted in raising awareness and creating positive change. And I chose this campaign focused around gay youth because it seems to me that many of us are in a kind of caregiving closet. We don't really talk openly about the daily challenges that we have. So the It Gets Better campaign was started in 2010 by author Dan Savage and his husband Terry in an effort to prevent suicide among lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgendered youth. And their idea was to have gay adults share their stories of being bullied, but not for long.
High school was bad. I was Catholic, went to Catholic high schools, Catholic boys' school. My dad was a Catholic deacon, my mom was a Catholic lay minister, and my family was very Catholic. And there were no gay people in my family and no openly gay people at my school, but I was picked on because, I liked musicals and I was obviously gay, and some kids didn't like that, and I did get harassed.
My school was pretty miserable. I lived in Spokane, Washington, which is a mid-sized town with a small town mentality. And I was picked on mercilessly in school. People were really cruel to me. I was bullied a lot, beat up, thrown against walls and lockers and windows. Honestly, things got better the day I left high school. I didn't see the bullies every day. I didn't see the people who harassed me every day. I didn't have to see the school administrators who would do nothing about it every day. Life instantly got better.
If there are 14...
As you can see, this video has been viewed over 2 million times on YouTube. As a result of this video and others like it that followed, national attention was drawn to the issue of bullying. Parents were able to better understand what their kids were going through, and educators were inspired to create innovative anti-bullying programs in their schools. But most important of all, Dan Savage has said publicly that the campaign saved lives just by LGBT youth knowing that they weren't alone. People who once felt isolated came to realize there were lots of other people just like them. Does that sound familiar? Caregivers have this same opportunity to talk about who we are and what we do. How wonderful it is to care for someone we love, but how frustrating that can be with little or no support. We can get that support by connecting with each other through our powerful and emotional stories. And it's my belief that caregivers need to have a voice in shaping the policies and programs that affect us. We can get that by being seen and heard. So how do we go about harnessing the power of storytelling? Well, organizations can begin by figuring out first who you want to reach and what your goals are. Reach out to a broad group of people to reinforce the reality that caregiving affects all of us and that your organization serves a broad range of people. You want to prepare a few interview questions in advance and give them to your participants in advance so they can think about what they want to say. As we all know, visuals add flavor to any narrative. So when you reach out to your participants and ask them to share their stories, encourage them to send in a video, a photo, or better yet, a video. You might want to consider partnering with a company like leftstuff.com. And I should say that I have no personal connection to this company. I just really fantastic. They help people create videos for free. You need a webcam and a laptop, but Left Stuff pretty much does the rest for you. They will give you a set of guided questions, or your organization can provide the questions for your participants. So the user just goes online, records a video. Left Stuff will actually edit the video for you. It can be downloaded and shared on social media. So after gathering your stories, you want to pitch them far and wide. Local news stations and newspapers are always looking for compelling and uplifting stories, and of course caregivers have them in spades. As hard as the work is that we do, it's also really rewarding for a lot of us. So you might want to even send a bunch of stories to NBC's Making a Difference campaign. And of course, in the end, be sure to tell the audience where you got your story in the interest of transparency. Caregivers can make their voices heard by visiting a website like Caregivers Speak Up. Again, no personal connection to this website. You can upload a video, you can record a video on your smartphone, you can share it on YouTube, Facebook. If you're ambitious, you can even create a YouTube channel, and you can collect lots of stories. Caregivers can also share their stories. Caregivers can be their own best advocates by engaging with the people who were elected to represent them, right? So, but we're all in this together. So when you speak with any public official, start the conversation by saying, who are the caregivers in your family? Listen to their story and then share yours. By having a conversation that's personal rather than political, you'll reframe the whole issue of caregiving. And I can't stress, it's really important to educate our policymakers, because a lot of them really need those tools, and the caregivers are the ones who can do that. So again, start that conversation by saying, who are the caregivers in your family? Of course, you can always speak out at any meeting that's open to the public. And for caregivers who are faint, camera-shy caregivers, take advantage of a growing trend. The number of podcasts that are dedicated to caregivers is growing. A host like me will listen to your story. This is my podcast, the Age Wise podcast. Listen to your story, help you shape it, and edit it ourselves and share it with an existing audience. These are just a few ideas. The bottom line is the more stories, the better. And here's my closing thought. We live in a highly diverse culture, but one thing we all have in common is that we're all, hopefully, going to grow old. And as we all know, the number of older Americans is about to rise dramatically. So this presents a unique opportunity for the millions of people caring for a loved one, young and old. Caregivers have first-hand knowledge of the problems we face and the solutions to be had. By sharing our stories, we can shake up a system of care that's based on a bygone era and help create new models of care based on the reality of our lives today. Remember, every caregiver has a story, so please share yours and encourage the people you serve to share theirs. Thank you.